I've learned a long time ago that when you try to work on culture, you see people hang posters up of the eagle flying over the mountain. It says, "Eagles fly and turkeys die," or whatever the inspirational quote of the week is. Those things don't change culture. What really influences culture are systems. That's where the engineer in me comes out.
Welcome to the Great Talent, Great Business Podcast, your go-to resource for building exceptional teams and thriving businesses. Each episode delivers actionable insights on harnessing offshore talent, integrating innovative technology, cultivating a vibrant company culture, and attracting and retaining top performers. Subscribe now to never miss an episode. For more resources, visit greattalentpodcast.com, where you can download this episode's free worksheet designed to help you apply today's insight to your business. And now, here's your host, Rob Levin.
Today, I'm joined by Don Harkey, CEO and founder of Centric Consulting Group. Don helps teams and leaders build better cultures and stronger systems so that they can show up as their best selves at work. He started out as a chemical engineer, but eventually followed his passion for leadership and jumped into the world of consulting. These days, he's focused on people over processes, which is very interesting for an engineer. Don, welcome to the show, and let's jump right in.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate you having me. Everybody is always surprised when they hear the chemical engineering background. It's funny every place I go.
Given the people over processes,
Yeah.
it's great to see you, Don. You talk a lot about culture-centric leadership. Can you just define that for starters?
So when we think about what people-centric looks like, it's a balance between two different things. It's a balance between empowerment and alignment. If you think about those two words, we try to think of those two things as like levers, when really it's kind of a knob. If we turn the knob all the way to empowerment, it's unleashing your people into what they could be inside your organization. The problem is that has to align to something. If you went to all of your team and they all said, "Hey, we want to start selling ice cream out of the back door of our business," or something, that doesn't help the overall business. So you also have to dial up the alignment piece. So what does the team need together? So it's balancing the needs of the individuals on the team with the needs of the team itself.
Oh, well, now that you defined it, okay, how do you do it?
It's really easy. Just balance it. Just turn the knob to about a five or six. I mean, the way that you do that is through systems. Like I've learned a long time ago that when you try to work on culture, you see people hang posters up of the eagle flying over the mountain. It says, "Eagles fly and turkeys die," or whatever the inspirational quote of the week is. Those things don't change culture. What really influences culture are systems. That's where the engineer in me comes out, is you don't just tell people that they should work harder. What you do is you hire better, you onboard better, you communicate better, you train your managers better, you have management conversations with employees systematically, you improve processes together, you know what winning looks like together. We've created a framework of systems that help organizations to implement ways to empower and align their people and create that balance. And it's actually moving the needle on engagement levels. That's something Gallup just came out with their State of the World's Workforce report, which comes out every couple of years. And the numbers are going down. We're not winning this battle as a world to get people engaged at work, even though we know that if you're highly engaged at work, you do a better job, the company makes more money, the people enjoy the jobs better. We know all of that stuff is true, but we're not moving the needle on it. Our company with this approach is moving the needle. We're doing things that Gallup hasn't been able to do. We're actually showing that you can improve engagement by meeting people where they are and putting out the hard truths of the company in front of them and educating them on that. Then they rise to the occasion because people are smart, motivated, and capable.
It sounds so simple, of course, when you say it. Where are companies usually going wrong?
I think companies go wrong with this old school management idea, this idea of if I'm going to lead my team, I have to tell them what to do, and I don't really trust them to do it. And I think that comes from most of us who got into management positions weren't trained for that position. You're just doing your job one day, and somebody came and tapped you on the shoulder and said, "Hey, you're awesome." And you said, "Yeah, you know what? You're right. I am awesome. This is good." And they said, "I'm going to promote you." And you said, "That's a smart move. Good job promoting me. That's smart." And then you turn around and say, "So what's my new job look like?" And they're gone. They never told you like how to lead people, how to
Good
motivate
luck.
people, how
Yeah,
to get feedback. Yeah, good luck. My
got
first
this.
job, I was a supervisor at a large corn facility. And I remember the second week on the job, the plant manager told me, "Don, you're going to be in charge of the mill this week." What questions do you have? And I remember thinking, like, I don't know what the mill does. I assume we mill corn. That's what I know about it. And suddenly you're overseeing operators who've been there for 30 years and knew their process. Like, what do you do? What's that job? So that lack of definition of that job has carried all the way up. And there's executives who run companies who secretly have never learned how to manage or lead people. I think that's a big problem right now that creates bad habits for a lot of organizations.
Yeah, I also feel, and I'll speak for myself here, us older guys who I guess got trained, at least in my case, in the 90s. That's when I started working.
Yeah.
And this concept of define what great looks like or define the end result and let the employee figure it out, give them the tools, give them the systems and all of that stuff. That didn't exist back then, right? I mean, maybe it did at some organizations. It seems like it's a new concept. And I don't know if you're familiar with Dan Sullivan and Who Not How, which is a very, to me, is somewhat aligned with what you're saying. Tell us a little bit about how systems and processes interact with this people-centric culture concept.
Yeah, you can't just go to your leaders and say, okay, you need to change the way you've been leading this whole time. You can't just go and say that. Just like you can't just say, okay, I want to become more fit. I want to become healthier. And you can't just say you should eat more vegetables or you should work out more. The change comes when you change habits. And habits are systems, right? So if using the analogy of fitness, what are you going to do? You can't just go join the gym. You have to say, I'm going to go to the gym on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and I'm going to have a coach that's going to work with me to be able to do this, this, and this. And then I also need to change what I eat at home, which means you also have to change what you shop, how you shop, which also means needs to change what is at home. So I bought a treadmill at my house. Like it's having things that are easy, make it easy for yourself, make it part of your workday that changes behavior. The same thing's true with culture. You have to start with how you hire people and how you onboard people. There's a lot of companies, there's a big workforce shortage in the US right now. And that workforce shortage is not going away, by the way,
I
anytime soon.
call it a talent crisis, and it's going to get much worse, and it's worse for small and mid-sized businesses.
It's devastating. And I'm seeing businesses close because of it. And you're seeing things that used to just work for large businesses that don't work anymore. Like FedEx not being able to keep up on addresses and stuff. It's because they don't have enough people on their teams to be able to keep up with things like that. So if you think about how you hire and onboard, it used to be I could just go because I have a job and you don't. And everybody used to apply for jobs. Well, now when you're hiring people, you're training them, you're pre-training them on what it's like to work for you. And if you're shorthanded, there's a temptation to do the fog the mirror test, hold the mirror up to the applicant. And if the mirror fogs up and you want to come in, then great, come in. We just need you, just get started. This place is a mess, just get going. And that creates a cycle that's really, really bad. So what we talk about is like creating a hiring process that aligns with your values, creating an onboarding process that's very deliberate, making sure that people have a great experience their first hour, their first day, their first week on the job, making sure that you're communicating, making sure they really know what their role is when they come in, making sure you're communicating to them what winning looks like. It's these habits that you install together that becomes this grand system that you can create your own operating system for what your company is. That then automatically creates this empowerment and alignment. Then your people rise to the occasion. You're unleashing them is what happens. And then they perform and then profit. Step 5, profit.
Yeah. Again, it sounds like common sense. Of course, most companies unfortunately aren't doing it. It sounds like you're really just setting the stage for people to be awesome and to be excellent, to do their thing.
And it's hard work because it's not like you just go change those things, right? And it's not like me as the consultant comes in and says, good thing I'm here. Rob, you need to completely change your business and all the things you've been doing in the past. And here's the things you do. You're going to resist that as well. What we've learned is we have to walk alongside businesses and we have to customize the solutions with businesses. What areas are you willing to talk about? Well, you're not willing to share financials with your employees yet, but are you willing to share some goals with your people? We're not really comfortable with jumping in and completely rechanging the hiring process, but onboarding is on the table. So let's start with those things. Let's get some small wins and then let's build from that. It does take a lot of work to change those processes because every company that we're working with also has a thing that they're doing, right? And they're not going to just stop the thing they're doing. We're working on a truck, hanging off the side of it, going 80 miles an hour down the interstate, trying to change things as it goes. We can't pull over the truck to upgrade it. You have to keep the company going because that's what's generating money.
Yeah, just change the tire while you're going 80. It's no problem. You guys will
Just
figure it
lean.
out.
Yeah, if everybody leans to one side, you can do it. Yeah. There's a movie like that somewhere.
Must have been a Burt Reynolds movie, I'm sure.
It's funny you said that because that was in my head too. That means we're about the same age.
When I do talks, there's a couple things I'm talking about, the talent crisis and what to do about it from a different perspective than you're coming from. The other thing I talk about is how the pace of change in business is now approaching ludicrous speeds. It was fast, and then the pandemic accelerated things, and now AI, I think, is accelerating things further. Given all of this change, how does that impact what you're saying? In other words, you have business as crazy as it is. You have all of this change. I'm borrowing a little bit again from Dan Sullivan. When there's a lot of change, you got to bring on new capabilities, right?
Yeah.
How does that intersect with this people-centric culture concept?
I like to say it this way, Rob. Your organization is a machine. That machine is perfectly designed to get the results you're getting today. So if your machine is designed to be traditional top-down management with a series of approvals and you don't really show what winning looks like and you don't really have clear roles, your machine's going to operate very slowly and it's not going to react to changes. I was at a store the other day, we'll just call it Lowe's because it was Lowe's, so I'll just call it out. And I went to buy something and the kid at the store literally said, "Why are you even here? You should go buy this online. Why would you even come into the store to buy this? You should go." And by the way, if you buy it online, we'll ship it to you for free. Where if you try to buy it here, it's going to cost you more money here. And then also we have a deal online. So go home, go buy the same thing online, and we're going to ship the same one to your house, and it'll be a lot easier. Like the frontline people know this is happening, right? They know there's a big change, seismic shift. Apparently, like the corporation doesn't understand it, or they're unable to make the changes needed at the speed needed to be able to change with the technology, change the times, expectations, all the things that are changing at really fast. So your machine's perfectly designed to fall behind. And that's the problem. So that's why this fits in. If you're upgrading those systems that we're talking about, you're also pushing more decision making down into lower levels of the company so that when they see those challenges, they can react to those challenges, but still do it in alignment with the organization and what the organization needs.
We are taking a quick break to tell you about something that you're going to want to sign up for. You know, if you look back, you'll see pivotal shifts in talent just about every 25 years or so. And companies that capitalize on these shifts end up jumping light years ahead of the competition. And right now, we're smack in the middle of one of those big shifts. And as a listener of the Great Talent, Great Business podcast, I want to make sure you have every advantage in your business. So that's why I'd like to invite you to join me on Tuesday, June 10th at 11 a.m. Eastern for a live session called The 25-Year Talent Shift, How the Smartest Business Owners Are Winning. We're going to cover what's actually happening in the shifting labor market, why leadership strategies and tactics that were effective just a few years ago no longer work, and how you can actually build your dream team right now. Plus, there will be a live Q&A at the end. To register, go to workbetternow.com/register. Again, that's workbetternow.com/register, and I'll see you live on June 10th. Now let's get back to this week's episode. Let's just assume you as the business owner understand that the pace of change in business is increasing and it's going to affect your business and you got to make changes. And of course, you also as the business owner, maybe they're a client of yours, for example, and they realize, hey, it's not going to be me that's going to do all this change. How do you communicate this in a way where people really understand this concept of change and will be proactive about it?
You have to have a process for it. You have to get comfortable with it because change is uncomfortable. And change management's one of those processes. How do you manage change? You should systematically do it. We work with a hospital, for example, and they've got a cross-functional team of people from different departments that meets once a month, and they look at the strategic plan of the hospital, which gives them key objectives, and they look at what opportunities arise. And then they launch what we call step teams, which is a kind of led from the middle of the organization that takes steps towards improving the key objectives. So for example, a real quick story, they were building a new building. And if you've ever been to a hospital when they're under construction, it's a mess. And this is a community hospital especially. So the locals were really upset because grandma can't park where they've always parked to get in to go see the doctor. So they were getting really frustrated. So somebody in the middle said, we're seeing this like every day. People are coming in pissed off at us because they can't park because they're building this building. Is there something we can do? And one of their people said, we need to be like Applebee's, where you can go and there's a designated parking place where you can just pull in and that's like, I'm just picking up food. I'm not coming to park for the restaurant. I'm just doing this really quick thing. And they said, what, that's an interesting idea. They spun off a team and they ended up building this team that ends up now they have 15 people. They call it their transportation team. I don't like the name, but they call it the transportation team. And they're like the Walmart greeters. They have vests and they meet people out in the parking lots and they help to meet people who are pulling up, who are looking for places to park. And they'll say, okay, bring up here. I'll go get a wheelchair. You come in. Grandma will come and sit down in the wheelchair. I'll make sure she gets in safe. I'll meet you on the inside entrance and we'll walk you up to the doctor together. The cool thing, Rob, is that sounds like just a big expense line for that hospital. but it has significantly improved patient outcomes because the patients aren't pissed off when they go see the doctor. When the patients aren't upset when they go see the doctor and they feel cared for, they're more likely to ask good questions. They're more likely to work with the doctor. They're more likely to just present better. It's improved their experience overall significantly. This hospital, which is super innovative, is located in a town of about 7 or 8,000 people, and they have almost 1,000 employees inside that hospital. They're giving big hospital systems down the road in a town of 200,000 people a run for their money because of their innovation, their ability to change. But that's an example of like they've got systems in place that allow them to implement and execute those ideas. Again, still in alignment with the direction of the organization, but they are able to make quick changes that respond to needs in the market.
So I guess there was a leader at the hospital who recognized this and didn't just empower people to create this, what was it, the transportation group or something. But I guess there's a culture of change. Was there one thing that led to the leader of the hospital to go in this direction, or was this something that was gradual over time?
That's the cool thing. The leader didn't go that direction. This came from down up. This bubbled up. This was an idea that came from the group. And then they had a mechanism where then the leader of the hospital could look at it and say, is that in alignment with the direction we're going? And so the leader didn't come up with the idea and then champion it and push it down. It's like, oh, my people want to do this. And the leader looked at it and said, that fits with our plan. That's really interesting. So they piloted it. They didn't go hire 15 people and launch this huge department. They hired like 3 part-time and said, let's try it and see what the results are. And here's the areas that we're going to be looking at. And they communicated back down what success would look like for that team. And fortunately, that team was already linked to that. So they already knew what they were going to be measured on. They understood it. And so once they launched the team, they could focus on those measurements and then they could be successful.
It also sounds like the leader did something to, number one, have a team or have a bunch of people in the organization to actually think a little bit out of the box. And then, of course, to allow an idea like that to rise up and to become an actual thing.
We've seen a lot of teams that we go to work with, they've created, we'll call them like a get along team or something like that, which is some kind of cross-functional team like that that comes up with ideas. The problem is they don't connect it to other systems. So they come up with things like, we should have a chili cook-off, or we should have a ping pong table or something. They'll come up with these really soft ideas. And that's turning up empowerment without the alignment piece. So like a lot of leaders are very interested in hearing from their employees, but they're like, give me the feedback and lob it over the wall to me. And then I'll come up with something and I'll lob over the wall what I think the response means. What the systems do is kind of breaks down those walls. It feeds the information to the employees who are giving the feedback so they understand what winning looks like. So they're not just asking for more chili cook-offs, which I'm not against. I like chili cook-offs, but those things don't ultimately change culture.
Yeah, I think the key of what you said is define what winning looks like. It's such a subtle statement and it's so powerful because I think most of the time you don't know what winning looks like. You're guessing. You have this, I use this term that I borrowed from somebody called mutual mystification, where nobody's really sure what winning looks like, other than a couple of KPIs, but you got to really paint the picture, let people kind of see it, and then have the systems in place to let them figure out how to get there.
Yeah, and leaders who are in it up to their necks every day, knowing what winning looks like, think that a lot of times think their people have a good perspective of that. We always tell them, now go to your people and say, make a list of the top 5 to 8 things that you do during the day and make it in a prioritized list, like in top priority down. And then you do the same thing for them and then have a reveal party. And it's going to be enlightening. Like you're going to be shocked. There's going to be things on their list that are not on your list at all. They're going to think about what's important. They're going to list things that are not important to you. There's a lack of knowledge of that. That's something that is really epidemic in the US, and leaders struggle with it because they're so into it. The mistake we make as humans is I think you know what I know.
Right.
And the truth is you don't. And especially in a business, people don't know. Leaders make a mistake thinking their employees care about profit. Employees don't even understand what the term profit really means. So why should I care about profit? So you have to explain what profit is and why they should care about it. You have to lay it out. You have to connect the dots for people so that they can then plug in and then make an impact on the organization.
It makes sense, Don. Switching gears a little bit, if you think about some of your clients that are growing businesses, small, mid-sized businesses, and they're growing 20, 30, 40% a year, fast-growing businesses, when it comes to a people-centric culture, what do they need to keep in mind as a leader is growing because the organization is growing, right? And there's different needs. But what's been your experience there?
I think a lot of times when companies grow, they forget about the roles and goals and they get lost in the noise of the stuff, especially at those rates that you're talking about. Those rates of growth are disruptive. It's disrupted the organization. When you're talking about like doubling the size of your organization in 2 or 3 years, that organization that used to run that ran really, really well is changing completely. So the one piece I would put out, and this is not very sexy, but this idea of organizational design is incredibly powerful. As your organization scales and grows, you have to look at your org chart and you have to think about, what does this mean as I'm adding to this? So when you were small and you had a leader who was over a team of 6 people, that worked great because you could talk to the 6 people, you knew them. As that team grows and suddenly that same leader is over 15 people, that doesn't work as well anymore. Now there's too much load on that beam, going back to my engineering days, right? And the beam's going to fold, and things that used to work don't work anymore. You have to constantly be thinking about the structure, processes, systems that fit in with your organization and scaling them to fit the growth of the organization. I think that's a piece that especially small businesses, they tend to just tack on things. And then if we go back to our truck analogy, then suddenly you have a fifth wheel hanging off the side, and there's a weird thing that you built on the back to keep it on the road, and all kinds of weird things. You end up with a Homer Simpson car if you're the right age to remember that.
It's breaking the scales and all of that stuff. Yeah. Let's talk about, we're a 100% remote company. All of our clients have at least one person that's working remotely. What special things need to be done in a remote or hybrid model when it comes to a people-centric culture?
Yeah, I like the question a lot. It's funny because before the pandemic, we were talking about open office or closed office, and it was the same context. And I look at the discussions as very similar to that. What if we have walls in our office? What if we don't have walls in our office? Does that drive culture? Whether you have people remote or in the office, it does impact culture, but that's not the driver of the culture. So you still have to think about, how do I make sure that the communication is really effective if people are remote? How do I make sure that they still know what winning looks like? How do I make sure they still know their roles? How do I make sure as a manager that I'm giving regular feedback? It's easier if you're working remotely to get a little bit lazy with that and say, I'll call you when I need you, and not have those conversations that might just occur in the hallway or when you run into somebody. So you have to be more deliberate about them if you're working remotely. But it still goes back to the original systems. I think companies make the mistake of thinking like remote work or not being remote is a driver of culture. It's just more of a feature that you have to design around, is the way I
Right.
think.
The way I've always seen it and the way we're experiencing it is, you just kind of got to do a little bit of extra, right? Maybe, for lack of a better way to say it, over communicate. And what's been very helpful for us is we run on EOS, and that's just a great platform where, between the weekly meetings and that cadence and the KPIs, it's very helpful.
Yeah, EOS is one of those systems. We have a framework and EOS fits into that. Great Game of Business is another one. We're kind of a collector of those systems as our company. And what we've said is, like, you don't have to change the language to meet any one of them. We're really trying to build like your operating system ultimately at the end of the day. And let's take best practices across all of those and implement those. But you're absolutely right. You have to be deliberate about that. You have to be deliberate about that even in the office. There's too many managers that we talk to who are like, yeah, I check in with my employees every single day. Well, walking down the hallway and shooting finger guns at your employees while you're walking in and saying good morning to everybody is not checking in with your employees. A check-in with your employees is sitting down one by one to your people and giving them feedback as things come up. It's asking them, how are things going for you? What do you need? What barriers are you thinking about? What's your future look like? All that stuff has to be deliberate, whether you're in the office or remote.
Yeah. Don, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for these insights. And in just such a short period of time, it's like a playbook for today's growing business. It's really awesome. Don, where can people find out more about you and People-Centric Consulting Group?
Well, I'll throw out two things. One is our website, peoplecentric.com. There's a lot of information on there. The second thing I'll point out is we have a podcast too, called the People Centric Podcast. So I imagine anybody listening to this obviously listens to podcasts. So go check it out. It's called People Centric Podcast, anywhere where you get your podcast. I love saying that because it just sounds really official when you say it.
Awesome. Don, thanks again for spending some time with us today and sharing your insights.
Thanks, Rob, for having me. Appreciate you guys. And I'll add one more thing for you is you guys truly run a people-centric company. I like that you're always thinking about these things. That's why we hit it off when we've met. I can tell when people are doing things the right way and you all are doing things the right way. So I appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah, that's why we had you on the show. It's as much for us as it is for anybody else. So it was 20 minutes. We're not only giving all of this awesome information to our audience, but we're taking ideas too. You can be sure of it.
That's awesome. I'll send you an invoice. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Don. Thanks for listening. The Great Talent, Great Business podcast is brought to you by Work Better Now. Don't forget to review, subscribe, and download the worksheet for this episode at the link below. If you'd like to connect with us, you can find us on LinkedIn at Great Talent, Great Business, or visit greattalentpodcast.com.